Hello, America. I'm Mark Levin, and this is Life, Liberty, and Levin Saturday. Thank you for being here. We have great guests this evening. Colonel Richard Kemp was the commander of British forces in Afghanistan, and Victor Davis Hanson. But before we get to them, we're the American people. We deserve a presidential race that respects us, that is in the tradition of this country, that recognizes that we are a small d democracy when it comes to elections. It's not enough to vote. We have an absolute right to vote for people who will reveal themselves so we can vote for them or against them. We're not to be manipulated like in dictatorships with all kinds of propaganda paid for by wealthy oligarchs or a state-run Pravda-type media that tell us what to think. That's exactly what's happening today. Kamala Harris isn't hiding from Donald Trump. She's hiding from you. She's hiding from me. What is she hiding? She's hiding a lot of things. She is the most extreme, radical leftist to ever run for national office, period. She's to the left of Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is a Marxist Islamist. Bernie Sanders is a Democrat socialist. She's to the left of him. She has nothing profound to say because in unscripted moments, she can't speak in complete sentences. And people, well, look, start to notice, like they did with Biden. And so what's going on here? The low-information voters know more about Vladimir Putin in Russia than they know about Kamala Harris in our own country. That's what's going on here. They want a blank slate where she can pretend she's not the failed DA, the failed Attorney General, the do-nothing, know-nothing Vice President of the United States, despite her radical ideology, because that's all she has. She doesn't have substance. She doesn't have experience. So she shoots from the hardcore left on every single issue. So we have a reckoning, America. Are we going to tolerate this from the Democrat Party? Are we going to tolerate this from the state-run Pravda media? Are we going to tolerate this kind of manipulation that they see in tyrannies and totalitarian regimes of all kinds all throughout the world? Or are we the American people who think for ourselves, who are a free people, who make this country work? This election is between liberty and tyranny. Make no mistake about it. And when this election is over, good, bad, and the ugly, you're going to have to answer to your children and grandchildren. Where were you in the election of 2024? What did you do to save our country? And either it's a big thank you or a big, why didn't you do more? That's what's at stake. So I call my radio show Radio Free America. This show is now going to be Cable Free America. I'm going to spend every program I have right up until Election Day doing everything I can to inform the American people about what's going on in this country with the Democrat Party, with Kamala Harris, with the media, and conversely, with those who love the country, who are trying to save the country, trying to secure the border, who support our military, our cops, law enforcement, our Constitution, and our history. It's that dramatic. And so I want to start tonight with something that has been troubling me a lot. Kamala Harris's view of Israel, of Judaism, and conversely, of terrorist organizations and states in the Middle East, of their front organizations in America. She has a horrendous, horrendous record. And I want to get into that. And anytime you bring this up, of course, the immediate answer is she's married to a Jewish person. I don't give a damn who she's married to. This isn't about identity politics. See these books? I've shown them to you before. The Abandonment of the Jews. Buried by the Times, the New York Times. Beyond Belief, and there are more. And I wrote about it in Unfreedom of the Press. The New York Times was owned and is owned by a prominent Jewish family. And if you had subscribed to the New York Times from 1939 to 1944, the height of the Holocaust, where Hitler was trying to exterminate the European Jews, you would have known next to nothing about it. Because the Jewish-owned New York Times, like the Jewish-owned Washington Post, covered it up. Why did they cover it up? For many reasons, but including the fact that the Democrat administration at the time, Franklin Roosevelt, did not want it prominently discussed or reported. So they put their Democrat politics ahead of the survival of the Jews. The New York Times still does that. The Washington Post still does that. The rest of the media still do that, as they seem to be in the tank for Hamas, don't they? But they're not the only ones in the tank for our enemies. Remember 9/11? 9/11's coming up, the anniversary. We remember those towers. We remember those heroes who went into those towers and never came out. We remember the heroes on the plane in central Pennsylvania. We remember what happened to our Pentagon. It's seared in our minds for those who saw it, for those who experienced it, the horror. It was an attack on the United States like we'd never seen before, ever. Who was behind it? The Islamist radical terrorists. They did it. They were behind it. They came out of the Middle East, and they attacked us. Wow. Had they shown any desire to back off? No. They're now attacking our friends Israel. They're trying to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, Iran, and more. And more. And we have a party in this country, the Democrat Party, and we have a vice president who attacks the Jewish state, who attacks the Jewish prime minister. They don't talk about the leader of Iran the way they talk about the leader of Israel. And so there's a reckoning we have in this country, a reckoning. As Americans and Jews have a reckoning, particularly Jews who vote Democrat. Is this what you believe? Do you understand who you're supporting? Do you understand who you're voting with? Let's get into this. Breitbart. Kamala Harris has extensive past ties to radical CARE. In 2007 and 8, CARE was named an unindicted co-conspirator in the terror financing trial of the Holy Land Foundation. That case, in turn, led the FBI to discontinue its work with the organization. In 2009, a federal judge ruled the government produced ample evidence to establish the ties of CARE with Hamas. It's a Hamas front group. The Palestinian terror organization, the United Arab Emirates, UAE, labeled CARE a terrorist organization in 2014, a decision that the Obama administration opposed. A report by Robert Spencer in Front Page Magazine. This has been known for years, but no one has cared. Back on October 2020, the Washington Free Beacon reported that as California Attorney General and then as U.S. Senator, Harris forged a relationship with CARE, one of the nation's top anti-Israel groups and advocates for boycotts of the Jewish state. After the Hamas massacre of October 7, 2023, this matters more than ever. CARE, the Free Beacon added, advised Harris on community issues during her time in California politics, and she later offered the group her gratitude and admiration in a 2018 personal letter to the group. Specifically, Hussein Ayalaush, executive director of CARE's Los Angeles office, praised Harris in 2015 for including the group in an interfaith meeting with the law enforcement officials. Harris, he said, exemplified leadership by vowing to tackle Islamophobia at a time when the state's Jewish institutions were facing threats. Even that was not all. As California's top cop, the Free Beacon noted, Harris partnered with local CARE officials and relied on them to advise her about community matters. In 2015, for instance, she hosted CARE for an interfaith community event following a deadly terrorist attack in San Bernardino. In 2016, as she ran for the Senate, CARE's Political Action Committee donated $1,750 to boost her campaign. That may not be much to the larger scheme of things, but imagine the outcry if Donald Trump had taken a small fraction of that amount from a group linked to the Ku Klux Klan. The Jerusalem Post. Harris appoints Muslim outreach chief with contentious views on Israel. In a series of statements and writings, this person who she appointed, Nazrina Bargzi, has dismissed Jewish students concerned over anti-Semitism as organized legal bullying. These concerns were raised in response to lawsuits filed by Jewish students against universities over what they perceived as hostile anti-Israel rhetoric on campus. The new outreach leader argued that these lawsuits were attempts to silence pro-Palestinian activists. Do you remember when these Jews were being chased down? Remember River to the Sea? You remember the violence. You remember these Jewish kids running into the libraries, into the cafeterias, locking themselves in. Well, it's only going to get worse in the weeks ahead. Harris has appointed as the campaign liaison to the Jewish community Ilyan Goldenberg. He supported Obama's abstention of the Anti-Israel Security Council Resolution 2334. He opposed the Trump administration's recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital and moving the embassy to Jerusalem. What else? He opposed merging the U.S. consulate to the Palestinians into the U.S. embassy in Jerusalem. He supported the disastrous Iran nuclear deal. And it goes on and on and on. He has long-standing ties to an anti-Israel group called J Street. That's who Harris appoints as her liaison to the Jewish community. There's more. This from the Free Beacon. Senator Tom Cotton, Representative Elise Stefanik, launched a probe into Vice President Kamala Harris's national security advisor over his ties to an Iranian government influence network, the Free Beacon has learned. In a letter to Harris, Cotton and Stefanik asked the presumptive Democratic nominee to provide information about her advisor, Phil Gordon's connections to Ms. Ariane Tabatabai, a senior Department of Defense official who was reportedly involved in an Iranian government operation to expand Tehran's soft power in the United States. Is Kamala Harris aware that this Iranian regime has an assassination plot underway to try and assassinate Donald Trump? Is she aware of this? Is her staff aware of this? Is her campaign aware of this? Notice they have an assassination plot against one candidate, him. Gordon, the letter notes, co-authored at least 3 opinion pieces with Tabatabai that argued against sanctions on the Iranian regime. Tabatabai was outed last year as an alleged member of an Iranian-run influence network that reported back to Tehran's foreign ministry. How do you like that? So the FBI is also looking into Robert Malley, the former special envoy for passing classified intelligence, that's the allegation, to Tehran, and who appointed him? Biden and Blinken. And she worked for him. And you see this outrageous, incestuous relationship that's taking place. There's more. Free Beacon. An inspiration to me always. Meet Kamala Harris's radical pastor. Well, Harrison Brown, this gentleman, Amos Brown, the pastor, longtime pastor, Third Baptist Church in San Francisco, have known each other for nearly a quarter century. She keeps in touch with him. He has said horrendous things about the United States, basically provoking the attack on 9/11. In addition to that, his rhetoric has not only alienated his high-profile congregant, he's visited Harris at the White House at least twice, told Religion News Service this week Harris remains a dues-paying member of his church. What else? Brown's radical policies have also veered into anti-Semitism. He served as a delegate to the 2001 United Nations World Conference Against Racism held in Durban, South Africa, best known for equating Zionism with racism. Why is she hanging around these people? She pursues them. What else? You're familiar with Rashida Tlaib, the racist, anti-American, Marxist, Islamist bigot, the anti-Semite. Kamala Harris defends Rashida Tlaib's controversial remark about Trump. She's not the first, nor will she be the last elected person to curse in public. And she goes on defending Tlaib. Who else? Remember Ilhan Omar? The Benjamins and all the rest of the anti-Semitic filth that rolls off her mouth? Shortly after House Democrats announced that they would indefinitely postpone a vote on a resolution condemning anti-Semitism, Senator Kamala Harris put out a statement in support of Representative Ilhan Omar, whose controversial comments on Israel were believed to have spurred the drafting of the resolution. How do you like that? Yes, this is who she is. New York Post. Kamala Harris has a long line of anti-Israel statements following Hamas's October 7 terrorist attacks. John Levin. She meets with CARE. She meets with these imams. She meets with the most horrific people. She surrounds herself with Islamists, with anti-Israel Jews, and so forth and so on. But it was too much as the president of the Senate to fulfill her duty and sit there to listen to the Prime Minister of Israel. She's sending signals all over the place. And so he writes, just weeks after Hamas, the elected government of Gaza, massacred 1,200 Israelis and so forth, Harris made it known that she was demanding Israel pump the brakes on operations that could cause civilian casualties. We believe Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians, she said on December 2nd. Less than a month after October 7, Harris spoke approvingly of rampaging pro-Hamas college students, telling reporters, I do understand their concerns, and I will never attempt to stifle or silence young people from expressing expressing their concerns. When Israel said they needed to destroy Hamas at their stronghold in Rafah, Harris was reliably against that, too, saying on ABC it was not logistically possible. Really? Well, that's exactly what they're doing. When a deranged protester told Harris on October 17 the U.S. and Israel were committing genocide, she responded by saying, I appreciate you raising this subject and I appreciate your leadership. Harris was squishy on Israel when she was a senator as well, voting against federal anti-BDS legislation, which passed the chamber overwhelmingly in 2019. Now, quickly, she decides to pick this guy, Tim Walz, who is perverse, who's the most radical kook governor in the United States of America. Why? Because he reinforces her views. Out of all the people she could have picked, who did she pick? It came down to two, she said. Shapiro, Jewish, in Pennsylvania, so-called moderate, supposedly pro-Israel. Well, we can't have that. Look at all her staffers. Look at all of her comments. What would her pastor say? The Daily Wire. Tim Walz condones and props up anti-Semites like the most dangerous professor in America, Hatem Bazian, says Elise Stefanik to the Daily Wire. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz is the most radical anti-Semitic ticket in history. And they are. And they're hiding from us, and they don't want to be questioned. Imagine if I had 15 minutes to question them both. Walz reportedly opened the CARE event, another one with CARE, and used his remarks to announce the formation of an office to address Islamophobia in Minnesota. Bazian is also the founder of the Anti-Israel American Muslims for Palestine, which is under investigation in Virginia for suspicions it finances terrorist activity. The troubling anti-Semitic histories of CARE and the Students for Justice in Palestine have been well documented, especially since Hamas's October 7 massacre of Israelis. CARE's executive director, Nihad Awad, celebrated the attack, stating he was, quote, happy to see people breaking the siege, and that Israel does not have the right to self-defense. The Students for Justice in Palestine has been the driving force behind the anti-Israel encampments on college campuses, which have led to the harassment of Jewish students and the disruption of some college graduations. Both AMP and SJP were named in a May lawsuit filed in federal court, which accuses the groups of working to support Hamas, a U.S. designated terror organization, by acting as collaborators and propagandists. Now, Walz hosted extremist Islamist Imam Assad Zaman multiple times. Zaman met with Walz's gubernatorial office as recently as last year, 2023. Zaman, who is the executive director at the Muslim American Society of Minnesota, has a history of sharing his Facebook page to share Hamas's press releases, anti-Semitic blogs, and a link to a piece on their website for a 2013 pro-Hitler film, reported the Washington Examiner. In a statement on October 7, the Muslim American Society of Minnesota affirmed its unwavering support, I quote, for the Palestinian people in their struggle against Israeli occupation, and called for the U.S. to pressure Israel to cease those atrocities many days before Israel even entered Gaza. Zaman also delivered the invocation before Walz's 2019 state address, was reportedly awarded over $100,000 in funding from Walz's administration. The ADL has stated that he has a troubling history of justifying violence against Jews. It goes on and on. The presidential candidate and vice presidential candidate for the Democrat Party. Anti-Semites, if they're not, let them defend themselves. Not with this media, the corporate media, but in front of people who know these groups and know what they're doing. Iranian appeasers and special pleaders. We have a wide open border. It'll be even wider open. And I don't want to look over my shoulder one day, and neither should you, and say, how did this happen? If we are attacked again. The Democrat Party has made its bed. It is nominating two of the most radical individuals in the country. It is now trying to sneak them into office, to cover up for them, to pretend they aren't who they are, lying about what they are, lying about who they are, lying about what they believe. Over my dead body. I'll be right back.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.